All right, we still have just a few people joining or asking to join here, so we'll just give it just another minute or two. Again, for those that joined maybe just a few minutes ago, just give everyone a quick rundown of how we're going to try and do this here. So what we're going to ask everyone to do is have themselves or keep themselves muted. Just if there does become a time where we need to have more interaction, we can unmute and communicate from there. But if we have too many people unmuted, it generally gives a lot of feedback. So as much as we can, what we're going to ask you to do is to put your questions in the chat, and then either myself or Colin we'll do our best to try and answer those, and we'll either try to answer them live or we will answer them in chat there. And the chat should be on, I believe it's on the right-hand side, bottom right-hand side there. So if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But have a few more people. We have a few more people that are asking to join there, so we'll just be a little bit patient here with us. Alrighty, well, we'll get started here. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you everyone for taking the time here to join us. I know you all have very busy schedules, and we certainly appreciate you guys taking the time here. Just one more time quickly, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them live or in the chat there. We are recording, and there's going to be stuff available on the dealer portal here after this. There's going to be documents and stuff that we're referring to that are going to come up. But if you have any questions, certainly don't be shy and put them in the chat there. We'll start off, I kind of explained this. We're going to have everyone's microphones muted. We are recording. We kind of went over this already, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. Here's a quick peek at the agenda that we have for this afternoon's meeting. So we'll do a review, go over some changes, the new products, spend a little bit of time talking about marketing. Colin's going to get into it going to get into some troubleshooting stuff. We're going to go over customer trainings, competitor comparisons. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the PLC control there, and then just some administration updates, payment terms, warranty forms, different stuff like that. So continuing on, we always find the best place to start is kind of a review of last year. So last year was a very busy year. I think for the most part, all of our dealers experienced that. It was a very busy year. It got busy pretty early, and it seemingly stayed busy until well into winter there. So that was very good. We were very encouraged to see that. Very thankful for the strong network of dealers that we have, of the work you guys do and taking care of customers and orders and all that. Overall, I would say it was a very, very successful year. I think in a lot of cases it was a record-setting year for both us and some dealers as far as how many furnaces were moved. So that was very good and very encouraging. G-Series furnaces, we believe that continued to perform well. There's always a few hiccups every year, but for the most part, there was very high success with G-Series furnaces, some minor issues. We also saw with our quality too. it wasn't perfect. We're always striving to try and make it better, but has greatly improved over the years, and we want to keep going and continue it that way. Another one that we saw really continue to grow was our the call or the demand for Rhino Flex. It's seeming like there is more and more customers that are wanting to get the Rhino Flex because they understand the benefits of it. So that's good. It's a growing project, a growing product, growing demand, and that's good. And we want to continue to do it that way. Probably one of the biggest issue, if not biggest issue we had last year was on G Series was our low water switches were probably the weakest point. I'll be going into this in a few slides here, but we did get new no low water switches in that we're going to be using moving forward here. The G Series fan motors were performed probably about average. Again, it's been a weak point on our furnaces for the last number of years, and it was something that we certainly wanted to address and find something that would be better and last longer. We have since probably since we've talked to a few of you last, we did get in a new Nidec fan motor and fan wheels that are going to be used on G Series furnaces moving forward. So we're very encouraged from what we're seeing so far, and I think some of the dealers that were at the dealer meetings got a chance to see some of them, and so far it's been a change in the right direction. We were starting to see towards the end of this last burning season, we were starting to see some of the nozzles on the G Series, the steel nozzle starting to warp a little bit. Mostly on G10,000s and 7,000s. There might have been a couple 4,000s, but it wasn't an alarming amount. If I had to guess on the number, I'd say approximately about 10 to 15 or so that we saw. But we are taking steps to try and improve that in the future with a half-inch three-piece nozzle that will prevent some of that warping. We're testing them out a little bit right now. We don't want to jump in and start doing all of our nozzles that way. We're fairly confident this is going to work, but we want to take it one step at a time before we switch a product and it really doesn't perform any better than what we had. So that is on our radar, and we're continuing to monitor it, and we do expect that this should help to improve it. Jumping into kind of the next topic here, we're going to be talking about some of the updates and changes we have on 2023 furnaces. This slide is specific around the G Series. So you can see on the bottom of the slide there's a couple of pictures, and that's showing I guess the control box where the low water switch, the high limit switch, and the RTD sensor would be. We now have a access cover on it that goes on the outside of the unit that make it easier to access all three of those components rather than having to take the handles off, take the side panels off, or those grommets and everything. They're a lot easier to access. It is still a little bit tight in there, but we feel like we've improved it to make things easier to access, to test, to change if we need to. You can also see some of the other changes we made. There is the decal on the control faceplate with the wiring diagram is on the reverse there, so that's on the back of the faceplate there. I talked about adding the access door. We've also moved the low water cutoff switch, so it's probably something you wouldn't necessarily see unless you would compare a unit from 23 or 22 to 23. We added some more gap there between the low water switch and the RTD sensor, or the dry well, I should say, so that when they're being installed or threaded in, that the low water switch isn't catching on there and damaging it. We've also made a couple other changes in there that I really like, where we are putting a male and female connector on them for things like, let's say, the low water switch. If you do need to bypass it, it's very quick and easy. It's about a 2-minute job. You just unplug the male, or unplug them and put the male and female together, which bypasses that. So that's good. We've also added a maintenance reminder built into the program. This was done just as an effort to help remind customers, to do things like empty out the ash or clean out the firebox, or it might be move the easy, clean handle, clean the fan wheel. It doesn't list specific items. It just said it's a maintenance reminder, just a reminder for them to do some maintenance on their furnace. It is fairly easy to clear off, but at the very least, it's a reminder for people to do some of these things. Just want to make sure no one's waiting to join here, so bear with me. All right, on the next slide there, again, a couple of pictures there. The pictures are talking about specifically the door handles on the G series. We wanted to make them a little bit thicker, feel like it's a little bit more solid when you're grabbing it. So we went to a cast iron firebox, or a cast iron handle for the firebox door and the refractory door there. We also made another change to have those tie down rods on all 4 sides of the furnace. On the previous versions, they are on the side but not the front. So just another point for the for straps or strapping down to try and make it easier to transport there. We got rid of the D seal around the firebox door. So what that D seal was is basically that almost rubber piece of weather stripping that went on the faceplate, between the faceplate and the firebox door. So it was there, or it was designed there to try and capture and hold as much heat, or minimize as much heat loss from escaping out of the firebox door as possible. And it did serve a purpose. However, we are finding more and more so that what all that D seal was doing was basically getting in the way. And it was starting to peel off, or guys would run their furnace for a month or 2, and then it would start to peel off, and they would, ask questions about replacing it. And in the big picture, it is a very small part, serves a very small purpose. And we found that it was causing more headaches than it was helping. So we just decided to pull it off. So you shouldn't see that happen in the future anymore, have that problem. We were also able to play with the door there, or mainly I should say the hinge side of the door, to make the firebox doors open just a little bit wider, to try and make it easier for loading them. Overall, not a bunch of groundbreaking changes on the G series this year. The more so little things we're always aiming to make our furnaces better and more user friendly.
Interrupt for a second. It looks like chat is only allowing it to go to you.
Okay, well, let's see.
Someone to test it. See.
Okay. You know what? Let me check here. See if I can quickly fix that.
Technical difficulties.
All right, just bear with me. So far, I haven't seen anything in the chat, but
when I tried, it only lets me send to you.
Okay, meeting group chat. All right, now I think you should be able to chat with everyone there. I think I've done that now. So, all right, thank you for being patient with us there. I'll jump to the next slide here. I talked about this earlier on kind of the overview of the 2022, but I think it's something that is near and dear to a lot of dealers' hearts, and that's that picture on the right-hand side. That is a picture of the new NIDEC or NIDEC motor. So it's got a stronger motor. It's got a 1/4 horsepower motor, but it's got the same RPM and CFM. So we wanted to go to a bit of a stronger motor, because there are times in G series furnaces where the fan wheel can sometimes get a little bit of creosote buildup, or they get a little bit stuck, and the motor didn't always have enough power to overcome that. And sometimes if you'd get in there and spin it, then it would start going, but didn't always have enough power to start up. So we went with a little stronger motor. And we also went to a bigger or a better balanced fan wheel. So with these two changes collectively, we definitely feel like this fan motor is going to perform a lot better than the Rotom and the Fasco motors that we've used in the past. It came with a little bit of a trade-off. So we had to put a larger hub shaft on there from 5/16 to 1/2 inch to accommodate for that. Not that it matters a whole bunch, but just specifically where it will matter is if somebody has an older, like a 21 or 22 or 2020 G series, and they get a new fan motor, they will need the full new assembly because their old fan wheel won't fit onto that hub shaft. They will also need a larger breaker and or fuse if you go back even further to, let's say, like a G200 that had the fuses. You'll go from a 2 amp breaker or fuse to a 3 amp. So it has a little bit of changes, but like I said, overall, we're very confident that this fan motor is going to perform better and solve a lot of those problems. We're also going we're making a fan mounting plates that can work for the G4000, G7000, and G10000, kind of like a universal plate, so that if you do want to stock them, you don't have to stock 3 different sizes. You should be able to just stock the one and kind of go from there, so that you don't have to have as much stuff in stock. We'll jump into the 2023 MF or C series. So MF if you're in Canada, C series if you are in the US there. So we made a few updates there. You can see from the pictures that's just a new control box cover. So it'd be more similar to what our G series control box covers were or are now, with a magnet on the side there. The other covers we had for our C series, they were functional, but it wasn't uncommon that they would get stuck and kind of hard to open and close. So we wanted to address that, and we made it very similar to the G series, not quite the same size, but very similar design. So far, I think it's gone over very well, and a lot of dealers have liked it, so that's good. We also, while we're on that topic of the control box, we moved all of the control boxes to the back on all the furnaces. We had some in the past where I believe it was the C375 was at the front, but the rest were at the back. So we want to keep it consistent with all of our units, and so we just moved all of them to the back of the furnace there. We also flipped the actuator because we did find occasionally what would happen is if you get a little bit of moisture, condensation, or maybe it was a pump leak or something like that, it can drip down on that actuator and short it out or get into the electrical. So we wanted to flip it around to prevent the moisture from running into the electrical part of it. Another kind of minor change, but we moved the drain valve to the other side of the blower box. So to the other side of the blower box, and the actuator will move closer to the blower box to keep it more rigid. We had some, a little bit of issues last year when we ran different actuators, that those actuators would sometimes move, and sometimes that would cause them to slip off and wouldn't open the damper. So we wanted to get that closer, and in order to do that, we had to flip the drain valve to the other side of the blower box. Again, not a huge change, but if you see a 22 to a 23 unit there, that's going to be a little bit different there. We also changed the fill pipe size. Now they're all the same as G series. If I remember right, the G series were was it 2 inch, and the MF series and C series were 3 inch. But we wanted to go to a standardized size. So we changed the fill pipes for all of them. They're all the same as the G series right now. And moving forward, that's how we're going to do it, unless we find a reason not to, or there's a lot of objections. But this whole thing, it was designed with the idea of trying to streamline parts in the sense that you have parts that work for different furnaces. We also started using full silicone gaskets on the firebox doors and the bypass doors for the MF and C series. We've been doing this for a lot of years on G series, and we found that that is helping the gaskets last a lot longer. It is normal that the C series gaskets do tend to dry out or leak more. That's because there's just higher temperatures inside the actual firebox, so it dries that rope out a little bit more. But we wanted to use the full silicone gaskets because we do believe that they do last longer and create a better seal. Again, not a huge change, but it's something that will make life easier for us for dealers and for customers for having those gaskets last a little bit longer there. All right. Sorry, just had a few people joining the meeting here. Just want to make sure they get in all right here. All right, so what else is coming in 2023 or this year? We're about halfway through, so some of it's already come already. But one of the bigger ones, and we've been talking about it for a while, is a dealer app. So we did launch it at the National Dealer Meeting. We started getting some dealers signed up. Now, just recently, we did run into a few issues with the app that we are working to resolve to get that back up and running. But we wanted to have the app, and we want to have the app moving forward. Is basically an extension of the dealer portal and more. So it's something that's designed, obviously can go on your smartphone, and you can pull it up at any time, whether it's you need a price sheet or a technical document or a link to a video. We are a little bit confined there where we didn't want to post the actual videos on the app because they take up a lot of space. We have links to videos there that you'll click to go to watch them on YouTube. There's technical documents, sales documents, marketing documents. There's a warranty form on there. We wanted to have this available for dealers so that this stuff is as accessible for you as possible and as easy to use as possible. So far, I think it hasn't gone quite as smooth as we would like. But we are working to iron out the details there, and it is something we hope to have ready and available in the very near future. Yeah, maybe Colin asked a good question here. For those of you that maybe were at the dealer meeting that were able to get the app on your phone, have any of you used it, or what's been your experience with it so far? Any feedback on that at all? And it might not have a whole bunch in here that were at the meeting or that do have it, but I figured we'd ask the question. All right. I'll keep going, and I'll come check the chat back in just a little bit here. Maybe Colin will watch it for me. Another thing that has already launched in 2023, I'm sure a lot of our US dealers have seen this already, but we have new retail financing for US customers, and so far from everything that I've heard from dealers is it's been really, really good. It's a company called Interbank. They've been extremely good to work with. They even had one of their representatives fly out to our dealer meeting here to give a little bit of training and answer some questions on it. So far that has gone very, very well. Great company to work for. They have really good turnaround times and response to customers. I'm sure some of you have noticed that, unfortunately, interest rates have gone up this year. I think when we originally started, we were at, was it 5.99 or 6.99%? Then it got bumped up to 7.99, and now, if I remember right, we're at what, 9.99
for 7 years.
9.99 for 7 years. So we have had a little bit of fluctuation that way. It's not the decision that we have made. Unfortunately, when when those rates get up, we are as susceptible to those as you are. So perfect. Okay, yeah, Marty said add the original test ad, use it a lot. That's good to hear, Marty. Thank you. Okay, also so one of the newer things that we're doing is the parts warranty claims all have to be done and submitted online via the warranty form. I think we've been doing this for a while, but just as a reminder to everyone, there is an online form that you need to fill out for warranty. So whether it's anything from a fan, a solenoid, an actuator, whatever it is, there's a wide variety of options there for parts. We ask that you fill out those forms online, and we get a lot of the information that we normally ask you for anyways. Which dealer is making the claim, the name of the customer, serial number, model number, the part that you're claiming warranty for, and just a brief description of why you think the part failed. This is really valuable information for us because it helps us to track those things a lot better and identify problems. Where if we don't do this, we're guessing at, let's say how many fan motors we're replacing or actuators or whatever it is. When we have this form, this will allow us to tell exactly how many, and we can look, is it okay? Is it 1% of these that are going out that need to be replaced, or is it 50, right? And if it's 50 or a higher number, then we definitely need to look at either are we using the part wrong or do we need to get a different part in. Another thing that's coming here this year, we are actually getting relatively close to this, is our new pellet boiler. We are aiming to have a soft release here for this fall. I want to say September, October potentially is what we're looking at. But this will be something that's different than our previous biomass units, where this one will just be strictly a pellet boiler. There might be more options. There might be more options for different fuels in the future. Could turn into corn or coal or something, but right now, just a pellet boiler. We are targeting something very similar to about the same size and same price point as a G7000, around the 200,000 BTU mark. But it'd be fully automated, automatic ignition, automatic feed. We'll have a built-in hopper. We think and we feel that this will help us hit a market within our market for the people that, they want to be off the grid, they want to be independent, but they either don't have access to wood or they don't want to get wood, but they still want to burn, a wood fuel to offset their heating costs. So we're pretty excited about it. It's taken a little bit longer to develop than we would like. Unfortunately, that's often the case in these scenarios, but we want to make sure that whatever we design and whatever we build is going to be done well and done right, so it doesn't cause a bunch of problems for dealers and customers in the future. I already talked about the fan motor, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but this gives a little bit different view on the motor. If you can see on the screen here with my mouse, there's a larger gap or a bigger spacing there to help keep the fan cool. It also helps if you get a little bit of moisture or something, it can't run back to the motor. So it is very, very excited to see how these work in the next year. A couple other new products that we have. We understand, hey, RhinoFlex is a great product, but being honest, it sucks to work with. It's like wrestling an anaconda. So we wanted to try and see if we can give an option or make life a little bit easier for the dealers that do want to use it. Is we are building or designed a pipe coiler, uncoiler there. It can fit a variety of sizes of rolls, whether it's 1 inch, 32 mil, inch and a quarter, 300, 500, and 985 feet. So it's a little bit tough to see from the picture here, but we have some more pictures coming in the next couple of slides. It does have like a rotating floor. So it doesn't just sit there and you don't have to make yourself dizzy walking around it. It does have a rotating floor that you should be able to essentially just pull off there. Price point on that one is 2,000 US or 2,500 Canadian, and we can get it shipped to you on a furnace load or whatever it may be there. So if any of you are interested in that or have questions or want to get more details, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or Colin or Vlad or Brent. Any of us should be able to help you with that. So here you can see is the inside. These are the adjustable sides here. And as I mentioned, this floor rotates to be able to pull off the pipe there. We're also, I'll call it a new product. I don't know, furnace trailer certainly isn't new, but it's a new product for us, we'll call it. So we have furnace trailers that we can also produce here. You have an option there of getting it with a winch or a hoist or a winch there. It does help to cut the price a little bit if we remove that part of it and you want to just go with a hand crank. It does help to cut the cost a little bit, but it's a very sturdy furnace trailer, and it can lift just about, I think, any unit with the exception of C800 or MF 20,000. But you can do a G10,000, a C500, and it can handle it, and it's built very sturdy. So you can see the pricing there is $9,000 US or 11,600 Canadian. Again, if anyone has any questions on it or is interested in it, please let one of us know. I think we are going to be building some here in the next month or so, I want to say. So if you are potentially interested, please let us know so we can get you on the list there. And there's a few more pictures. This is the tray or the racking, I guess, essentially where the legs of the furnace sit. So it's got pins to pull in and out. We also have a new option. I'm sure there's been times when we're talking with dealers, talking with you guys, and we're trying to troubleshoot a G series, and we often will ask, okay, what are the return temperatures coming back? Because G series specifically can be sensitive to colder return water temperatures because that water comes straight back, across the spirals. You can get condensation and potentially creosote forming or building up there. So in the event that we can identify that somebody does have cold water coming back to their boiler, and for whatever reason they either can't or won't update their system or their underground line, there is another option. It's a tempering valve or a cold water protection valve. It is designed to do exactly what these what it says is it basically heats up the water before it returns back from the furnace. So it's got basically a built-in thermometer that once the water starts to get below 140 degrees, what it does is it starts to open up one set, or open up one side and close the other side, and just basically sends hot water back to the return side. Does work very well for maintaining an even temperature on your return line. The downside with doing that is you are temporarily sacrificing heat to the buildings or whatever you are heating with that line to try and warm up the return water. But it does help in those cases that people do have systems that are either inefficient or work very hard. They are $250 to $350. And it can be a lot cheaper than updating your heating system or updating your underground line. So it is an option there. I'm just going to scroll through the chat here to see if I've missed anything. Haven't. Perfect. So if anyone, again, has questions on it, wants to talk more, happy to answer those questions either now or over a phone call or text or whatever it is. We've also made some mounting brackets for plate exchangers. So we've noticed or heard from dealers that there are times where when you're mounting the bracket or mounting the plate exchangers, they are hard to mount to a wall or something like that. So we came up with this design that slips into the back of the plate exchanger there, that you can bolt them on or slide them on and off and bolt or screw them to the wall to make them more sturdy and to be able to mount it properly. So they're adjustable for different sizes of plates. They're made of stainless steel, 409 stainless, and they come in at a pretty good price of 12 to 16 bucks. So if that's something you guys are interested in, again, certainly reach out to one of us. We'd be happy to get them on order for you or answer questions you might have there. I talked earlier about the low water switches. So on the bottom there, or on the left-hand side, is the picture of the old one on the bottom and the new one on top. The old one was a stainless steel, and we wanted to go with something that was stainless steel. Unfortunately, the ones that we got just didn't work properly for what we use them for. We looked at a lot of different options, and the best option we could find was that black plastic GEMS low water switch. We originally went away from the plastic ones because we found that when they did go bad in the past, there were times where you're trying to get that plastic switch out and it would ultimately break. You break a thread or something like that. So we wanted to try and provide an option for that, and what we ended up coming up with were these crowfoot wrenches, as you can see on the right hand side there. So they can be used for either the plastic switch or the stainless one. That should allow either customers or dealers to get in, because it is a tighter space, and get a good grip on that low water switch to remove it without breaking it. All right. Just before I go into the marketing section here, I did also want to give everyone, I want to do it earlier and I just forgot. I want to give everyone a little bit of an update on how the year has gone so far and kind of where we're at with production and different stuff like that. So it started out, it was a good start to the year. Early buy went well. We were able to get a lot of orders in. So again, thank you to everyone who did order there. It really helps us to even out our production and makes life easier for us to plan everything out. We're currently booking furnaces into, I'd say, late July, early August, approximately. So if anyone is potentially needing some furnaces or starting to get a little bit busier, reach out to us so we can make sure that we schedule a spot in for you. Try and keep those lead times down there for you guys. Again, if you have questions on it, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Mike, I will not quit rocking my chair. I need to move. I'm a nervous talker. So there's a good chance when I'm talking to you on the phone, I'm usually walking around anyway. So I can't sit still. But anyways, been a good year so far, and that's been good. I understand it's been a little bit slower start of the year than it was last year, but from talking to a number of different dealers in different areas, I'm still very confident that come fall time, or later summer, fall, it's going to pick up. It seems like there is still a very strong demand. It just seems like people aren't buying quite as quickly as they were in the last couple of years. So that was something I wanted to open up to the group chat there for the guys. How has the year been for you guys so far? What are your thoughts on how fall is going to be? Just try and get some feedback. I'd love to be able to have half an hour long conversations with every one of you, but unfortunately doesn't always time frame doesn't always work that way. So just for the guys that feel comfortable sharing, how is spring and summer been for you guys? What do you see, or what do you think is going to happen for fall here? Before I go any further, I just wanted to ask you guys as well. Is there any questions on any of the stuff that I have presented? Is there anything that I maybe would have gone over too fast, or something that maybe wasn't clear, or things that maybe we would have missed? Any kind of feedback that way?
If they start in the chat, we can always unmute them too.
Yeah, and if somebody would like, you are more than free to, let's say, unmute yourself and share that way if you want, if you're comfortable that way. If not, that's okay too. If you'd rather do it in the chat, whatever works. All right, I'll keep going. Okay, Eldon, crazy. Yeah, I think, just to address Eldon's comment there, it was certainly a very busy, winter, January, February, and it slowed down a little bit in the summer and spring now. But what I'm hearing from a lot of different areas, Eldon had mentioned in his area with electric rates going up. I also believe in Ohio there was, I want to say, 50% rate hike or something like that. And it seems like there's more and more talk about that. Seeing a lot more talk about increased rates on electric. So it seems like that's going to be a good driving factor for us for moving furnaces or selling in the future. And Sophie had mentioned seeing a lot more interest in Gs. Absolutely, I would 100% agree with that. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. I think definitely there was a pretty significant tax credit in the U.S. in the last few years. And there are some good incentives to get a G series furnace. So that's certainly part of the draw to the G series. The other thing I think is that's just the way technology in the market's going. Certainly the conventional style furnaces, the MF and C series, will always have a place as long as the state allows it. But more and more people are starting to see the benefits of going to a gasification unit, whether it's on the efficiency side or less smoke. There's certainly a big push. For us, generally, percentage-wise, I mean, it varies a little bit. It's usually anywhere from a 50-50 split to a 60-40 split in favor of 60%, C or MF series and 40% G. But in the last couple of years, we saw those numbers get a little bit closer together. That's good. Sorry, I'm just reading through some of your comments here. So thank you everyone for commenting there. Yeah, Marty's mentioning about the electric going up. Paul's having a very strong year. That's good to hear. Mark had mentioned, slower summer, but it's pretty typical. Absolutely, I would agree, and that's something I wanted to make sure I address too in this. Oh, call. I think you might have to make me host there. Sorry, everyone. My computer just disconnected. I don't know why.
Central boiler, logging in.
Yeah, they did it. Oh no, I am. Okay, I am still going. I am still live. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to share that. Can everybody? Can everyone still see me? Still hear me? Good. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I don't know why my meeting disconnected. But yeah, I want to mention, just for those, let's say, newer dealers or dealers that haven't been with us as long, is is what we saw in the last couple of years was an exception to what normally happens. It was an exceptionally busy year last year, all year, which is rare. But now we're seeing what I would consider more of an average year, where it gets a little bit busier in spring, but then usually June and July get pretty quiet. Things start to warm up, and people aren't always focused on heating. So it's normal. Don't get discouraged. That's very normal. I don't think it's anything that you or anyone has done wrong. It's just more of a standard year that way. So yeah, I'll continue to go. Thank you everyone again for posting those comments. I'm going to jump into a little bit of marketing stuff here, and specifically what I want to talk about in the marketing was the Request a Quote program, or the REQ program. So for those of you that don't know, or maybe aren't quite aware of what that program is and how it works, is that is a program that is basically ran through our website and ran through our company here, that allows people to, basically raise their hand and ask a question. For those people, the customers that maybe they're not quite ready to call or email a dealer, or maybe they are and they just don't know it yet, they can go onto our website there and fill out a little bit of information and request a quote. Sometimes it's people just wanting to kick some tires to find out if it's even affordable for them. So it went really well. And for those dealers that were around all of last year and before that, it evolved a lot over the course of, call it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and it's continuing to evolve here and get better. At one point we were taking all of the request of quotes we got in, and we were forwarding them to dealers, which is a good and a bad thing. Yeah, they got a lot of leads, but not all of the leads are very qualified, and sometimes it could get very overwhelming with trying to just keep up with all those leads. So what we want to do is fine tune it and try to do as much or a lot of that work for dealers as we could, to answer some basic questions, to get some ballpark pricing, and then only send the really qualified leads to dealers, in an effort to try and streamline that process there. And so far, I think it went really well. We almost went from one extreme to another of sending a lot of leads to, not sending, a ton of them, but the leads that we're sending out were very qualified and seemed to buy a lot more, lot higher percentage of the time compared to the other ones. So we're working, again, always want to try and improve that and make it better. I'm trying to educate customers before they purchase, trying to answer those simple questions for them. We're also, while we're on the topic of marketing, we're also working on making more how-to videos. Those we find are very, very good both for dealers and for customers. It can be anything from changing a fan assembly to a control, accessing the parameters in the control, different stuff like that. Trying to make a lot of that information available for customers, so they don't necessarily have to call you guys as a dealer or us or email to ask, hey, how do I change my settings on my control? Because the amount of people that read the owner's manual, although the information might be in there, it's not always very high. All right, looks like. Okay, I'll keep going here. This slide kind of talks about what are we focusing on for this year and potentially more in the future. Well, it's not a secret. We've been kind of, talking to dealers and talking to you guys for a long time about focusing online and social media. As much as we may love it or hate it, it's very effective, and that's where a lot of people go to find out information. That's how you capture a lot of these audience members is online and in social media. We are always trying to add new dealers in open territories, right? I want to be very careful how we bring that across, right? We're not looking for dealers in territories that are already being serviced. Well, we're looking for dealers in open territories, either states that we don't have dealers in, or maybe there's a pocket within a state. So we're always trying to fill in those gaps as well. Just a fun fact for everyone here is 18% of our customers found out about us from or at a trade show. So I know that we've really focused on the online side of advertising, but it still is very beneficial for dealers and for us to attend shows. So I'm not saying that you have to spend a full summer or whatever it is going to all your local trade shows, but it certainly does have benefits for going. And a lot of times it's a relatively cheap option, especially if it's a local show.
I will be doing a trade show webinar this fall as well.
Okay.
Everyone is welcome to attend.
Yeah, for any of those that didn't hear, Colin said he is going to be doing a trade show webinar here this fall. So I don't know all the details on it, but I'm assuming he's going to talk about, hey, like where to set up, what to display, what conversations are better had at a trade show, how to get more people into your booth, different stuff like that. So if there are materials or different things that you guys want or need, please let us know. I mean, we have the same stuff we've used for a while, whether that is pop-up banners, tablecloths, different stuff like that. But if there's something that you guys see that might be a better option, or if you're needing any of that stuff, please let us know, because we can help get it for you. And a reminder for everyone, it's going to kind of segue into my next point here, is you can use your co-op advertising dollars to buy that stuff, or at least pay for part of it, right? So please do. I mean, it's money that is there to be used, so don't be shy about using it. While I'm on that topic, we are making some changes to our co-op advertising program. We've gone in the past is either $100 or $150 of available credit per furnace purchased. It worked, but it made it a little bit confusing to figure out, okay, who had what for co-op advertising. You'd have to go back and count furnace sales. So what we're doing now is we're doing a budget based off of 1% of total purchases rather than just furnace orders. So that means your furnaces, your underground pipe, rads, pumps, whatever you buy, all goes towards that total. And when we looked at it by doing it this way, it makes it a lot easier for us to keep track and you guys to see what you have available. And it pretty much equals out about the same dollar amount as it would if we went just off of furnace sales. So we feel it's a good improvement, and now you guys won't need to either call in and ask us, hey, how much do I have available for co-op advertising? That is something that we are aiming to have that you can see on the app when that's up and running. So one small or one potentially big point at the bottom there that I did want to touch on is we are looking at in the future of having a customer app. Now, with that being said, I don't want this to sound like, hey, we're going to have it for next year. This could potentially be a 1, 2, 3 year project that we are wanting to undertake. We do understand the value in having an app nowadays, so it is something that we do want to have available for customers, but I don't want to make the mistake of telling, yeah, we want to have it for next year. Yeah, that would be great, but I don't want to promise, or we don't want to promise that timeline. It is something that is on our project list, and we do want to look at developing in the future. All right, so I'm gonna hand things over to Colin now.
You want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, if you guys want here, while we're just working on on switching things over from my computer to Colin's computer. If you guys want to take about a 5-minute break here, it is Central Time. It's 1:55, so we will reconvene here in 5 minutes. So if you guys want to go and stretch your legs, grab something to eat or drink, we'll take that opportunity to do that now while we are here. So I'm just going to mute myself, and we will be.
So this invoice I did not see. What is Baker manufacturer? I haven't seen nothing. No, it isn't. Well, it's the same total. Look at two things I call there. Yeah, okay. Oh, let's see. You can spend. So you need to contact them, I guess. What does it do, or what it does? Is it easy? You know, this is what it's for you, is Monday, for the RO system. Yep, okay. At least I know we have invoices for, but I just don't know what it's for the. Oh, okay. Lots of papers here. All these files. For me as well. Probably one of the first things.
Okay, looks like our 5 minutes is up. So just checking, can everybody hear me? I heard it come through Devon's speakers with lots of feedback, so I'm assuming everything is working. So again, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Colin Marsh. I am the territory rep for Northwest Ontario and a large part of the Midwest US. And I've been with the company for, I guess, just a little over 7 years now. My background is in dealer development over the last 40 years and sales and marketing and a whole lot of other things. So I guess you could say I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. Sometimes that's handy, sometimes it isn't. What I'm going to be going through is the troubleshooting section. Now, ideally, it would have been nice to have had Pat here, who handles all of our technical work for our dealers and for customers. But he did put this program together for the national dealer meeting, along with help from Albert and the other guys in the engineering department. And so this will be a good test to see how well he's trained me on these things that we should all know. So cut me some slack again, jack of all trade, not master of this one. So, but we'll work through it together. And if you have any questions, again, jump on the chat, or if you can unmute yourself. I realize some of these questions can get a little bit detailed and it's kind of tough to type it all out. So our goal here today on the troubleshooting side is to make this whole process a lot simpler for you and a lot less time consuming. And I know from experience and with customers calling in here, it can be very frustrating, both as a dealer and as a customer, to have to deal with issues when they come up. And of course, it's always at the most inopportune moment when you have an issue with your furnace. And especially if the issues keep dragging on and we start grasping at things to try and find the solutions. So we think it's really important to have a process in place to kind of go through that process and try and get these issues resolved the first time and in a really timely manner. So that's kind of what we're focusing on here this afternoon. Yeah. There we go. So we kind of put together a process for troubleshooting, and it really comes down to 6 steps. And of course, the first step being identifying the problem. And we've all had it where a customer is called in and says, you know, my furnace isn't working. Okay, well, what's wrong with it? Well, it's doing this, or it's a lot of smoke, or my spirals are sticking. And so we want to go through that list of symptoms to identify exactly what it is that that customer is experiencing. So we find out what all the potential problems are, and then we need to go beyond the systems, identify what the root cause is. And it could be a number of things. You know, the symptom might be that they're not getting enough heat in their house. But what's causing that? It could be sticking spirals. It could be a blocked airway. Could be a number of things causing that. So the next step, then isolate that problem so then we can deal with it. Once we get it isolated, we then make the repair or make the fix. And in this case, you know, could be cleaning the spirals, causes things to work again. But are we actually fixing the problem, or are we just working on the symptom? So in this case of not getting enough heat, we identified that it's the sticking spirals, but then what caused the spirals to stick in the first place? Could be a cold water return, and we've got a new product to deal with that. Could be the moisture content in their wood, could be a low heat demand in the shoulder seasons. So there are a number of things that we need to look at. So fix the problem and then test it, because you may think you have it resolved, but something else can be coming up in the meantime, or there could be multiple causes for it. So we want to solve it once so it doesn't come back, and then follow up with that customer after a short period of time and make sure it hasn't come back, or make sure there aren't more issues. Get it solved the first time, so it doesn't keep coming back and nagging at you and taking up time, certainly during the busy season.
They look like this, right? Is inspiration just because of the subject or go have a thing, you know? Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. Bear with me a second. I'm not a master of these technical issues either, so there we go. I think that fixed that problem. Okay. So moving along here, I hope. All right. So again, the first step was identifying the symptoms. And so what we did to try and make this whole process easier for you is came up with a whole list of all these questions or concerns that we get from customers. So this whole long list of symptoms, and there's a pretty long list. So to make it easier to go through, we then broke it down into different sections. So we've got performance symptoms. So the furnace isn't performing the way it should. For example, the fire keeps going out, it's cold in my house, it's burning too much wood. So those type of symptoms. The next one is issues with the control screen. So there's something on my control that says there's a problem. That could be, local water cut off, all those different alarms that come on. So hopefully when the customer sees that, he picks up the phone, gives you a call, so that you can deal with it before it becomes an even bigger problem. So control screen issues. Then it could be an issue with a particular component. So my furnace is running, but my fan's not going and it's calling for heat. My turbulators are sticking. My smoke bypass isn't opening, or my smoke bypass is leaking. So all those different components can have different symptoms associated with them individually. And then another one would be issues with leaks or with moisture buildup. Again, those are the scary ones because they often require bigger repairs. But again, we want to know them as early on in the process as we can and deal with them. Now, all of these things that we're going through here, if you were at the dealer meeting, you would have got this handout from Pat called G-Series Troubleshooting Guide. This also went out after the meeting in an email newsletter to everybody. So you should have a copy of this, and I'm basically just following along with it. So if you haven't got it with you, when we're done, go back and check your emails, and you should have a copy of this, and it will be available again after the meeting as well. So the big list of symptoms, go through the list, find the one that matched, and it'll tell you which section it is. So then you go to your individual troubleshooting sections. Again, it's broken down into a number of areas to check. So for example, if the system says you've got an airflow issue, here are the things to check, and I put them on the screen. So start with your top damper. And a real simple way to check that is when the heat cycle is on, take a piece of Kleenex or a piece of paper and hold it in front of the top damper opening. If it's not sucking that tissue in aggressively, then that tells you there's a blockage. So in order to access that, you unplug the actuator. You can remove that whole top panel out the left side of the furnace if it's too hard to access it without removing it. So again, I think it's 6 screws you remove, the whole panel comes out, and you can slide out that whole damper. And then you can go in there and inspect the airways and clean it. If you can't access it fully from from the rear of the furnace. Then you move on and go to the side air channels and you troubleshoot that. And then, okay, it was dirty, so I think I've got it solved. Let's wrap things up and move on, and hopefully the furnace works. But, you know, 5 times out of 10, you're going to get that phone call a few days later. I got the same problem again. So you go back and now you got to look, and maybe it's the bottom damper that's stuck, or it's the air nozzle is plugged. So if you have an issue with airflow, go through all these steps, check them all. It takes you a little bit more time on the first call, but means you don't have to come back and check it again when the problem reoccurs. So again, each section is listed there step by step on how to troubleshoot it, and then also on how to resolve the problem. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's good to invest it up front so you're not coming back again and making another trip over and over and over again. So hopefully that makes sense. We are continually adding to this and making updates. We're getting more and more, how would you say, we're able to pinpoint problems a lot better based on these symptoms, because we've got a whole lot more experience with what the dealers have told us, what we've heard from customers. So just because we used to do this 2 years ago doesn't mean it's the way to do it now. So always keep on top of these troubleshooting tips. And again, it'll save you a lot of time and effort in the long run.
Good call.
Yes, Devin.
Just got a picture from Mike here. It looks like, at least on his screen, he's a couple of slides back from what's showing on mine. So can we just ask the chat if it's just Mike or if it's someone else that is, like, there's a little delay, like that's what Mike is seeing there. Like on my screen, it's showing up fine.
Okay.
I want to make sure, maybe I'll put it up in the chat.
Okay, we just got a little technical issue with someone where their screens aren't lining up here, so bear with me for a minute. Okay. Let's see here.
Try to share it again, maybe. It's showing up fine on my screen. I just wonder if it might be his.
Okay. So maybe try that and check. Is it coming? You want to check with him?
Mark
See?
says everything looks good to him. I'll talk with him.
Okay, so sorry about that. Hopefully we got that resolved and we'll move on. Okay, so these were again the troubleshooting sections. So we've got the symptoms, which tells you which section to check. You go to the section and then follow the steps on how to troubleshoot each individual component. So the next thing, which is a little more detailed, is going to be on the electrical side of things. And if you don't have a background in electrical like me, my extent of my electrical experience is changing a light bulb. So learning this was pretty hard. So I asked Pat to go through this and try to put it in a way that even I could understand it. So with a little bit of basic knowledge, you should be able to go through all of this and be able to troubleshoot pretty much any electrical problem you have on the furnace. And okay, so what he's done is gone through the key electrical components, which are the local control itself, the O2 sensor, and the RTD, which are the ones that we have the most issues with. And again, he's then broken it up into sections. And you'll see here, the one I have on the screen happens to be the O2 board and troubleshooting it. And so just like with the other sections, it goes through step by step on what to check. So if we take, for example, with the O2 troubleshooting, typically if you're going to have a problem with your O2 sensor, it's going to read 0.1%. And that's normal when you first fire up the furnace or when you first change a sensor, because that's the default reading. And typically it means the sensor hasn't heated up or gotten up to temperature yet. So you want to give it some time until it starts reading normally. The other thing is, again, if you unplug the sensor and replug it in, it's going to take time to bring that back up. But if it stays that way for more than 10 or 15 minutes and is stuck at 0.1%, then we want to troubleshoot and find where where the problem is potentially located. So if you look at these two drawings on the bottom, the one on the left is for the actual board, which mounts in behind the control panel. And on the right is basically the cord that goes to your O2 sensor. So the first thing you want to check is make sure that you're getting actual power to the control board. So if you check between spot 6 and spot 7 here on the left, you should be reading 24 volts of direct current. And again, you can do that with basically any type of multimeter. You should be able to set it for that and see. So that's the main power that's going to it. And then on the bottom, you should be between 7 and 8. You should be reading somewhere between 0 and 10 volts coming in. So if you're not getting that, then it's an indication that you've got an issue with power not coming to the board itself. If you're not reading any type of further on in the charts, there's a chart that'll show what those readings between 0.7 and 0.8 should be. And it's basically that shows what your O2 percentage is. So for example, if you had O2 reading of 20%, it should be reading a DC voltage of 2.8, right? So you can refer to your chart and it should match up with what your actual O2 level is going to be. So sounds like a little bit confusing, but if you have the charts in front of you, it'll make much more sense. Obviously, if you had 0% O2 was actually being read, it would read as 0 volts. On the other side, then you're getting to the plug. And so what you want to check is basically the two yellow wires, 1 and 2, and that should always be reading 4.55 volts DC. If you're not getting that power coming through to the plug, then it's an issue with your sensor board, and your sensor board needs to be replaced. On the other side, if you check your ohms on the yellow lines going from the plug to the actual O2 sensor, if you're not reading 1.9 ohms, then that tells you that the plug is defective and should be replaced. And again, it can be a little more complicated than that, but if you go through the charts and the specs, you should be able to work right through that, identify which is the part that needs to be replaced, because they're not cheap, and you certainly don't want to replace them if you don't have to. So again, step by step, a little bit at a time. And of course, if you're doing it and you have issues, you can always call the office and we can go through that with you. But the nice thing is, if you haven't done one before, or if you're going out, haven't done one in a while, all this information will be available on the app. So you can just pull it up on your phone and follow along with it if you didn't bring hard copies with you. So that's how essentially the O2 sensor works and how the troubleshooting information works. So the one for the logo control basically goes through every screw on top of that unit and explains what it does and where it goes and what it should read. So you can go through that entire board and troubleshoot it and find out which component might not be working at all or might not be working correctly. So a real handy tool to have that and can solve a lot of problems. The other thing that it will tell you in the troubleshooting guide is what you need to basically bypass the individual components. So if you want to bypass your low water cutoff, it'll tell you to where to put your jumper wires. If you need to bypass the high limit switch, same thing. So again, step-by-step procedures, depending on what component is giving you the problem and which one you need to temporarily bypass. So is that all making sense? Have I thoroughly confused everybody yet? I certainly hope not. And again, same thing for the RTD board, which is basically your temperature setting. It'll tell you how to troubleshoot that, what your DC power should be going to it through the 3 cables that you've got, basically a red, a yellow, and a blue, and how to check those. So again, we're not going to go through that all here because it's kind of difficult doing it online. But if you go through the document step by step, and again, if you have questions, call in and talk to one of us, and we can kind of go through that with you on a case-by-case basis. The other thing that Pat did is there's nothing worse than showing up at a customer's place. You find out the problem and you don't have the part, or you don't have the tool to fix it. I've done that myself, knowing exactly what I'm going to fix, and then I get there and realize that I forgot something. And so what he's put together is what he keeps in his toolkit. So his first section is the electrical tools. Obviously, you want a multimeter, crimping pliers, extra wire, wire nuts, connectors. So those are all things that you should have with you. Regardless of what the problem is, it's always good to have that with you when you go to call on a customer. He also has a list of tools in there. That's a good thing to have for the furnaces, not just for electrical, but for everything, right down from pry bars to a caulking gun to a pipe wrench to socket sets and screwdrivers. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that list and make sure that you have all that in your toolbox. And then, of course, there's supplies that you're going to want to have with you when you're in the furnace servicing business. Obviously, silicone, mortar for the bricks, retainer washers, nuts and bolts, screws, those type of things. So again, there's a whole list there that you're going to want to have with you. And then finally, the actual parts for the G series and the CMF series. So for example, if you're selling G series furnaces, parts that you should have on hand, and it's always a good idea to have with you at any time, is a new logo control module, an O2 board and sensors, a good spare to have on hand, a fan motor or a fan assembly, an extra actuator, a high limit switch, low cutoff switch, an extra power supply, and an extra RTD sensor or water temperature board. So those are kind of the minimum that you would want to have. And I know some of you keep a huge inventory on hand, and it sure is nice to show up at that customer, identify the problem, figure out what's going on, fix the problem, have the part on hand, tell him what he did wrong, and then give that customer the confidence that it's not going to be down again a couple days later. So makes the customer happy and saves you a lot of time and effort in the long run as well. So that's a real whirlwind on what's included in that customer training info. I know some of you have probably looked at it or you're involved in the actual in-person dealer meeting. So is there any questions or thoughts on that? Or areas we could go a little more detail if there's some specific questions right now. Or if you have any suggestions for additional things that we should add into our troubleshooting guide, I'd certainly appreciate any feedback along those lines. Okay, with that said, I'm going to turn it back over then to Devin, who's going to talk about a few things before I wrap up with a little more detailed information on changes for the G series control for 2023. So let me stop sharing here, turn the power of the computer back to Devin. Devin, you have control.
There we go. Perfect. Can everyone still hear me all right? And that transition went well and technology is good. Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen here again. All righty. Okay. So I'm going to be talking or touching base a little bit here on customer training and why it's important. What do we go through? Like Colin mentioned, we had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time here with Eldon. He was very gracious enough to help us with this. And the context behind it is we want to give customers every opportunity to succeed as we can. And from talking to a number of dealers in the past, it seems like there is quite a high number of success stories when we find that dealers are spending time with them. Maybe the best way I've ever heard somebody put it was one of our dealers said to me is, I got to spend an hour or two with them regardless. He says, either I do it while I'm there installing and firing up the furnace with them. I go over the unit and I train them and I show them how everything works and why and how to clean and different stuff like that. He says, either I do it right when they first fire the unit, or I have to come back in 3 weeks to a month when they can't figure it out or something isn't working. And now I have to fix the furnace and then give them training now anyways. So he says, I've got to spend the time with them anyways. And I think Eldon, you and I have had very similar conversations like that. Is spending time with the customers, because the furnaces have changed a lot in the past 5 to 10 years. They're not your grandpa's boiler anymore, right? Not just anything that you throw in the door will burn and burn well, right? So there's tips, there's tricks, there's things that we need to go over with them as dealers to make sure that they understand, to give them the best possible opportunity to succeed. And it's less headaches for everyone when we find this. And this is one thing I certainly wanted to encourage some comments or some opinions on dealers or from you guys, as to how do you find it goes with customers that you either spend time with right away or you don't. From my conversations with dealers, it seems like a lot of times when there are problems that do come up, a lot of them can be avoided. And in a lot of the cases, I would say too, that the problems that people will run into will be just, I'll use a blanket term of lack of maintenance. They didn't know they were supposed to clean, even though, the dealer may have gone over it with them already. And it's just a reminder that they forgot, because it's a lot of information to retain. When you're talking to them for half an hour or more, that's a lot of information to retain and remember. And there are things in the owner's manual that talk about your daily, your weekly, monthly, yearly maintenance, but not a lot of people always take time to go over that and to reference it. And just to give you guys a little bit of detail, we are working on a couple of different videos. We have one that Eldon, we work together with Eldon to put together with here. That can be used as a refresher course for customers. And also, I believe that Marty, we were talking about working together on a video, like a customer training video. So we want to have a lot of options and a lot of resources for people or customers to use and to refer to, because I think you guys would agree that you're far more likely to get somebody to watch a 5 to 10 minute video than you are to get them to read through their owner's manual. So we want to hit this from as many angles as we can, whether it be the in-person training that you guys as dealers give them, the owner's manual, or 1 or 2 different videos that they can watch to try and give them as much opportunity to succeed as possible, right? So basically, what do what do we want to go over, or what's the best way to train them? And that's going to depend on, every area is a little bit unique in themselves, whether it's altitude or moisture content or weather or wood species. There's not necessarily a blanket thing that we can say, do this exactly this way and it will work, because every area is a little bit different. And that's where it becomes so valuable for you guys as dealers to spend that time with them. Because there's things that we can't always explain as well as you guys can, because you live there and you understand the different challenges of the area a lot better than we do. Right. So it's always a good idea to spend some time with them and at least show them in the owner's manual, okay, here's a breakdown of the daily, the weekly, the monthly training. It's on page 27 or whatever that page is. If you ever forget, refer back to the owner's manual. It's all in there. Depending on whether it's installed by you guys as a dealer or they do the install themselves, it's always a good idea to go over, at least some basics with them with the install, and just, talk to them about, hey, if you have an older system with older underground line, it might be beneficial to take some temperature readings to make sure that the water's not too cold coming back. Different stuff like that. When you get into the operation, show them how to stack the wood in the firebox, side to side, front to back. You can lean on your own experience from what you find works better. My experience, or our experience, for the most part, side to side does work better. There are people that say front to back works just as well. I always tell people, whatever works best for you, do that. If front to back works better, then do front to back. If side to side works better, then do that. But show them, how to stack the wood, and how tight do you want to make it? You don't want to crisscross wood. If you have a really good tip for helping them light the fire, show them that. Spend time with that. Also, walk around the furnace and show them, hey, this is your bypass handle. Make sure that when you close it, it goes over center and it closes all the way. This is the easy clean handle. This is how you want to do 4 or 5 sweeps every time you fill the furnace. And if you don't do that, here's what can happen. When you're talking about maintenance, and can be anything from cleaning out the ashes, how often or at what point do you want them to look at cleaning out the ashes? How do you do that? Specifically, where do you clean? Make sure you show them how to get behind the brick. That happens more than I think a lot of us realize, is that people, one of the most neglected areas is ash behind the brick. People either didn't know or forgot or don't know how to clean it properly. And when you actually get down to it, that's where the buildup happens most often. So don't be afraid to go into the little details with them, and share as much of that information with them as you can, because you guys and we've seen and we've lived through the troubles, and if we can share that experience with them before they have to go through it, everyone's going to be a lot happier. So go over the operation, the maintenance, make sure, the warranty registration form, make sure that gets filled out. Make sure that, if you have to beat them over the head with a jug of water treatment or a test bottle, make sure that they at least understand that. We can't always force everyone to do that. We do as much as we can to encourage and remind people, but make sure that we're going over, okay, this is what you need to do to maintain your warranty. You have to add water treatment. You have to send in water samples. You have to make sure they're good water samples. Do all that stuff with them, right? At the end of the day, if we can have that question of warranty or something like that comes up, that we can say, look, like, we spent the time with them. We did everything within our power to make this thing work for them. That's basically what we're trying to accomplish, is trying to be able to give them the information and the tools to succeed.
Mark from Highland had a good comment. He makes his own YouTube videos, and he has a QR code next to his phone number on the sticker. He puts on a control panel that takes him to his channel. So Perfect. Right on the control, when they see it, they can scan it and it
Yeah.
takes them to the videos, makes it really easy. And I've seen Mark's videos, they're very good. And Eldon's got some great comments too on video work that they've done.
Yeah.
So other dealers are a great resource.
Yeah.
And there's no reason you can't use other dealers' materials. And I would encourage everybody to look at what other dealers are doing. And just like the video we have here from Eldon, I'd encourage everybody to look at that as well and make sure you have a good plan when it comes time to train the dealers for our customers and not just try to do it off the top of your head. But have a good outline for it. So congratulations to you guys who are doing that, going the extra mile and getting that done.
Absolutely. I mean, that is fantastic, and that is great to hear. And I don't think it would be an issue with any of our dealers. We generally have a really good group of dealers that are very open to sharing that information. And if we can share it with each other, the more resources we have, the better. More resources for customers to watch videos and different stuff like that. That's fantastic. And I think, Eldon had mentioned too, I don't know if it was Kenneth or Isaiah had made a video, and they're always very, very well received. And we always hear videos mean a lot and they help a lot. So thank you guys for doing that, and certainly encourage any other dealers that want to do something similar. Absolutely do it, because I would rather bombard someone with information than not have enough out there.
If they are willing to share their videos or YouTube handles or whatever, if they want to put it in the chat, I can take that and then include it with this review.
So that's something we want continue. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned too, that have a rep, whether it's Lynn and Anita in Ontario, or Eldon in Virginia, West Virginia, Scott in Ohio, Indiana, Colin for kind of the central US. They're a great resource as well, right? So don't hesitate. If you guys have questions or comments, reps are always very willing to help or to bring suggestions to us or whatever it is, right? So don't forget that we also have that resource as well. And you can always call us, if you want to talk to either myself or Vlad or Brent or Pat, whoever it is. I mean, there's many different avenues for communication. Don't be shy to pick one, and we can go that way. Does anyone have any questions on the customer training aspect of it, or maybe some of the guys that have done it for a long time can share some of the experiences that they've had, and generally how long they spend with customers, whether it's at their yard or while they're installing it. Any kind of feedback like that they'd want to share with the group is always appreciated. Maybe while if there is anyone typing here, what I will do is I will just jump to the next slide, which is would also really want to encourage everyone to ask questions, provide comments. I would like to have this next section potentially more of a roundtable discussion, whether you want to type it into chat or if you want to unmute yourself to ask questions or to comment. It's a very important one, and it is, why doesn't my screen want to, 1 second here.
I have to click on it. For different screen.
Yeah. All right, let's go try it that way.
Where's the troubleshooting guide?
I got it.
How do we get this thing to work?
All right, so hopefully that's gonna work. So what I'm gonna jump to here is the competitor comparisons. So it is very, very common, for both customers and dealers from time to time to ask us, okay, so what sets your furnace apart? And I won't go, and I don't want to go into the full blown explanation of it. I know we have documents available on the dealer portal and will be available on the app. That goes into quite a bit of detail. From as you can see on the screen there, we really focused around central boiler and crown oil. Those are the two biggest competitors that we have or that we run into in Canada and US. And I understand there are other boiler manufacturers out there, whether it's Portage in Maine, they're more prevalent in Canada. HeatMaster, there are other ones, but these are the ones that we feel that we run into, or most dealers run into at shows or people asking about. So in those competitor comparisons, we have like a kind of a quick hit section, but then we also have more sections on more detail, and we also have a video that we put together while we were doing the national dealer meeting here, where we actually had two of their units here. We had a central boiler unit and we had a crown oil unit that we had taken apart, and had groups of about 10 people, and we would go through them individually and highlight different things about the units, for lack of a better term, flaws or ways that ours stand apart. So I wanted to I guess invite any dealers or any of you in the chat here, if you have any questions on the unit or anything like that, that either myself or Colin or maybe somebody else in the chat can help to answer. When it comes to competitor units, I'm very willing to spend time answering those questions here or giving you an overview. If you'd rather read the document on your own, you can do that. But I want to make sure, because of how important it is, that I give everyone an opportunity to ask those questions and we can dive into it. So maybe I'll start off by saying, all right, just bear with me. I think we got something in the chat here. All right. Oh, sorry. There's just somebody joining. One of the things that I often like to point out to customers, whether it's in person or at a show, and I think it's something that often gets overlooked at how important it is. And that's having a recirc pump on our G series furnaces. Having that recirc pump really helps to even out the entire temperature of the tank and allows us to store as many BTUs evenly throughout the tank as possible. And it might not sound like that big of a deal, but when the comparison that I will often use when I'm talking to somebody or asking questions about it, it's a very basic and simple question, is when you charge a battery, do you charge it to 50 or 70%, or do you charge it to 100%? And everyone always says, well, it's 100%, right? And it makes sense. Well, why wouldn't you want your furnace, if you think of your furnace as a giant battery, why wouldn't you want to charge that thing to 100% and store as many BTUs there as possible, right? That's basically what that recirc pump does. And don't kid yourself, just because our competition doesn't have a recirc pump in there does not mean that they do not run into the issues of not having a recirc pump installed. I think it's pretty common, especially for the Crown Royal units, to thermal layer, where it's hot at the top but cooler at the bottom. And it is not uncommon at all, from what I've seen, for customers to have to install their own recirc pumps to overcome that obstacle, right? So for me, that's one that I find is one that kind of flows under the radar, and helps to share that with people. there's always the ones, whether it's warranty or features, right? Another one with, really popular on our units is the smoke bypass, right? People don't really know and understand how nice that feature is until you have it, until you use it. It also allows our units to be installed indoors when nobody else's can, right? So it's a unique feature and a unique selling point on our furnaces that nobody else has. Can be anything else from the warranty on the refractory or firebox doors, or water jacket materials like Central Boiler. Yeah, they like to promote stainless steel, but it's a stainless steel firebox with a mild steel water jacket, right? It's not a full stainless steel furnace. Some of the other things that gets brought up from time to time from talking to customers at shows is, Crown Royal will say, well, our furnaces have more heat exchangers, so they're better. And it's a very blanket statement that really doesn't make sense, because you can challenge it very easily, right? So when they say that statement of our furnaces have more heat exchangers, right, what they're essentially saying, or what that statement should mean, is that their furnace is more efficient, right? More heat exchangers should be more efficient, okay? But they're not. Their furnaces are not as efficient as ours, and you can see that in that that document that we have. Like, we go and we list everybody's lab tested efficiency. So these numbers that we're talking about, these aren't numbers that we say, well, these are our opinion on what our furnaces are and what theirs are. No, these are lab certified test numbers that everyone has to do, right? So it's an even playing field for everyone, and our units come back higher, right? So when they say, okay, ours have more heat exchangers, that's great. Why aren't they as efficient then, right? I would definitely encourage all of our dealers to spend time reading through those competitor comparisons, and also going through them and spending time learning about the competition's furnaces as well, because you have to definitely know the brand that you're selling, but it really helps to know and understand where we stand apart if you also understand their furnaces. And yes, you can take our competitor comparisons, because we've worked very hard on them, but it's very valuable for our dealers to spend that time to do it themselves as well.
Also good to read the forums.
Yeah, there's a couple of online forums. I think a lot of it is switching more so to Facebook. There's a lot of different Facebook groups out there. The forums are, lack of a better term, I would say they're dying out a little bit. They're still very valuable, but a lot of people are migrating to the Facebook, different Facebook pages, and I know there's a lot of our dealers that are fairly active in there. And we're very grateful for that. They're very active in, either conversing with other, owners, or maybe doing troubleshooting on there, or voicing opinions on, installs, different stuff like that. But I'd encourage our dealers to do that too. It doesn't hurt to go on there. You don't necessarily have to post a whole bunch, but you can go on there and read and retain a lot of really good information. I know Eldon had posted something in the chat there, just comparing the Crown Royal and Central Boiler units with the maintenance and cleaning, access to different areas, different stuff like that. So thank you very much, Eldon. Does anyone have any specific questions or anything in particular they would like to go over on the competitor comparisons? I'll leave it open. Or yeah, if it's other brands as well, like maybe somebody wants to know more about the HeatMaster boiler or something like that, very happy to try my best or our best to answer any of those questions. I'm sure between myself and the wealth of knowledge we have within the other dealers in the chat there, we can answer pretty much any question on a lot of different boilers, if somebody would like to spend time doing that. I'll leave it open just for a minute or two here. If somebody does have questions, if not, then we will, continue on here.
Hey, Devin, one thing did you guys were filming when you had the
Sorry,
Crown
Eldon,
Royal and Central?
bear with me. I'm just going to turn up my my volume here. Is yours muted or no?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to unmute my computer here. Sorry, Eldon, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
I was
Nope.
just when we were out there, you guys had the Crown Royal and Central Boiler stoves there. I knew you were doing some filming. And do you have any of that in a video where dealers could
We do.
see what we're talking
Yep.
about with some of the airways and stuff?
Yeah, I want to say it's approximately about a 20 to 25 minute video. From what I've seen, like it's a really good video, but it's sometimes a little bit hard to see the details of what we're pointing out and exactly where, because we had larger groups together. Like we had people kind of around the furnaces, and then the guys who were doing the camera and the audio were kind of in and out there. But yes, we can post those videos, or at least a link to the video for guys to watch. I feel like it's definitely worth the 15-20 minutes to listen to those videos. I think there's a lot of good insight in there. For a lot of guys, I think it's going to be, I knew a lot of this stuff, but for guys who are maybe a little bit greener or learning a little bit, I think it's very well worth it. Like I said, if anyone has any questions, don't be afraid to either put it in chat, or if you'd rather unmute yourself and ask that question, absolutely do that. I'll give it another about 30 seconds to a minute. If we don't have anything, then I'll turn it back over to Colin here in the meantime, and he can continue to talk to you guys about, or get ready to talk to you guys about the control and the programming there. Okay. And if there's anything that we haven't covered yet, or maybe that you guys thought we were going to cover, or again went over too fast, please don't hesitate to reach out or to ask the question. We want to make sure that we have as much interaction as we can, and give as much opportunity to everyone as we can to ask questions here. So I'm going to mute myself here, and I'm going to let Colin take over. Okay, it looks like we had. There was, Keith had mentioned there is a Facebook HeatMaster dealers only page. So if I know there's a customers page, and if there's a dealers page, Keith, or if somebody has that, maybe Marty or somebody, if they have the link to that, that they'd be willing to share in the chat, that would be fantastic. If we can get more people, more dealers, whatever it is on there, if someone would be willing to share that, that would be fantastic. But I will turn it back over to Colin here.
Okay, thanks, Devin. Looks like we're right on schedule, so this is going really well. I'm now going to put on my Albert Penner hat. He's our head of engineering, and we're going to talk about the G-Series control system. We've had a number of updates recently, and so I kind of want to review what's changed last year and also what has changed this year. Then we're going to go into a little more detail on exactly how that control works, so what the functionality is and what it's doing when all those settings and everything are changing, and so how it's meant to physically operate the furnace. Then we'll go into a little bit on how to make when and how to make adjustments to the control, as part of the troubleshooting process. So kind of go through the basics and then get into a little more practical stuff as we move forward. So bear with me as we go through this. Again, jack of this trade and not a master, but If there's any questions, again, you can chat, or if you need to unmute, because I realize some of this can get pretty complicated. So I'll try to go through slow and just jump in if there's any questions. So the most current version of our G-Series software is version 4.3.7. I know they are working on some other updates. And again, a lot of these changes we may come from feedback from dealers and things they would like to see. So again, anytime you have issues with the control or suggestions, let us know, because it is an ongoing process of development. Okay, so for 2023, changes that we have made for this year. Again, this came from, I believe it was Eldon's team out there in Virginia, had made some comments about how it would be great to have a service reminder built into the control. And I actually think some of his guys actually did some programming on their own. So of course we stole that idea because it's a good one and incorporated here. So now you'll see on the current furnaces that there will be a service reminder that will pop up periodically. And it comes set standard as default to come on after 100 hours of service. Now that is 100 hours of actually during a heat cycle. So it's not clock hours, it's actual heat cycle hours. And you can actually go into the program and change that to come on every 40 hours or every 200 hours, whatever you want. And when it does pop up on your screen, you can just scroll out of it and it'll remind you again periodically, or you can turn it off and it'll reset that timer to come on again. So it's not meant to say, hey, it's time to clean ash out of your system. It's just a reminder, hey, don't be forgetting to do the service work on here. And even if it's one person who remembers to do their maintenance because of it and doesn't give me a phone call on the weekend, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. So another change is what we're calling the cold start error warning. And again, it doesn't mean that the furnace has gone into a cold start cycle. What can happen is when you fire up the furnace and it goes into a heat cycle, it should heat up relatively quickly. And what this warning is telling you is that that furnace has been burning for an hour and has not increased more than 20 degrees. So it says, hey, there may be a situation that you want to look at. It could be that, there's no cold bed developed yet, so it's taking longer to heat up. He could have turned on the heat in his big shop and is trying to heat the floor after it's been shut off for 2 weeks. So it's pulling all the heat out of the furnace. So, or an air blockage, so any number of things, but it just says, hey, pay attention. It's not heating up as fast as you should. And as soon as you hit the cold start button, that warning will go away. Another one is it used to be that when you would operate the smoke bypass, the dampers, it was during a cycle, would stay open. And normally that's not a problem, but if you happen to be installed indoors and you open that front door and your dampers are open, now you've created a draft which could potentially pull ash and smoke out through your air dampers and into your building indoors. So a little simple change. So now as soon as you open that smoke bypass, it's going to close the top and bottom dampers and you don't have that issue with smoke potentially escaping. So for majority of people, no big deal, but for your nice new building that you built around your furnace and the first time you open it, blow smoke, probably not real happy. So a real simple fix that we've been able to incorporate into this year's program. So carried over from last year, again, just as a reminder, a couple of things. We had the low water cutoff, and let me see, my screen is off here. Okay, so the low water bypass, What this does, it gives you the opportunity to, I'm on the wrong screen here again. Sorry. There we are. So the low water bypass, what that lets you do is bypass the low water cutoff switch. So if you initially installed the furnace and you want to test all the controls, but you haven't put the water in yet, all you have to do is hold that escape and the right arrow button for a few seconds, and that'll allow the system to run and operate for up to 5 minutes. Also, an easy way to show someone at a show how the system works. Obviously, you don't have water in it, but again, press those 2 buttons and they can see how the fan comes on and how everything works. So just a little simple trick for you, whether you're installing or demonstrating the product. The next one is to manually start a heat cycle. And again, you may be in a situation where you're servicing a furnace and it's at 170 degrees and your cutoff is at 160 to 180, and you want to check and make sure everything's working. So it won't go into a normal cycle because you're kind of in the idle period. But if you press and hold the cold start button, again, it'll manually start that cycle and it will heat all the way up to your set temperature. Again, typically 170 or 180. So just a way that you, when you're there working on a furnace, can do a quick test to make sure that everything's working. So a little simple thing that we've changed. Okay. The other thing we added last year, again, there was concerns from a lot of people when we added the oxygen sensor, was what happens if that oxygen sensor fails? Can you keep running the furnace? Well, you can, but it's not going to run very well. So what we did is we added the option to turn the O2 bypass off. So you just go to this screen on your control, change that setting to bypass on, and now what it'll do is run as an old style G series, so a 2019 version, for example. And so it'll still cycle, your dampers will open, but they'll open to 100% and close to 0. So it's basically downgraded it to be more like a competitor's furnace, where it's just basically an on and an off. And so you can run that if you get into that situation, but don't leave it that way. You know, get that O2 sensor replaced, because it will run less efficient and you will have more issues potentially with creosote buildup. Okay, another thing we added is data logging. And I'm sure none of you've experienced this. You're dealing with a furnace, you've got issues with it. You try this, you try that, and you just can't figure out what the problem is, and it's got us all stumped. And so now we have the ability to actually record all the system data over a period of time and then go back and analyze it. So we can actually see what all the readings were from that furnace at any given time on any given date. And we can, you know, it may be, you might figure out from looking at that, well, you know, the problem is it's happening on Saturday morning when the heat comes on in the house and my wife's doing laundry and the kids are trying to shower, and there's all of a sudden a huge big demand for heat is causing that furnace to temperature to drop and go down into a cold water shutoff. So just an example of what you can find from that. So it's real handy information. And so a simple process, you just basically take your micro SD card and pop it into the slot, and it'll start recording data once every minute. So we're getting basically a log every minute of what the furnace is doing, and you can leave it for a couple of days or over the weekend or however long you want. You can leave it in there permanently, and typically after about a month, it'll start recycling and overwriting that data. And then once you're ready to have it read, you just pull the card out, download the file onto your computer. It'll be a CSV file, kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. And if you send that to us, we can format it into more of a legible system. or if you think you're going to be using this data more often and want to do this multiple times, we can certainly send you kind of the format, and you can format it yourselves and be able to access that data. So real handy thing to have. We don't have to use it too often, but when you're stumped, it's nice to be able to go back and look at that root data. So that's kind of the new changes. Next system is, how does all this work? And so what is the G-Series control system meant to do, and what does all this functionality do for us, and what's the benefit? So jumping right in. So basically, you've got two sets of dampers on the back of the furnace, which allow the air into the system. And I'll go quickly through some of this because some of it's pretty basic. But basically, your top set of air dampers is controlling the burn rate in your furnace. So it's controlling how many BTUs that furnace is able to produce, because the more air you put into the firebox, the more fire you're going to have, the more smoke you're going to have, the more fuel you'll have to burn in the secondary chamber. And so again, the top dampers are controlled by your water temperature. When it gets down to your cut-in rate, typically about 160, it turns on, opens up the dampers, lets air in until it gets to 180, and then it shuts off, is the basic way it works. What makes it a little more interesting is what we've referred to in the past as the cruise control system. So what it wants to do is, once you get to the midpoint between your cut-in and your set temperature, it's going to start closing itself down, and it's going to modulate open and closed in order to extend that burn time as long as possible. So rather than a whole series of short start and stops, it's going to try and maintain that temperature, which we've known from our empirical data is certainly more efficient. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is if you are burning higher moisture contact wood, that can create problems because you're running shorter burn times. So it doesn't get as hot as it potentially could in the firebox. And so you could have issues with creosote buildup. But there are ways to deal with that, and we'll go through those shortly. So that's your top damper. As far as options, let's see. Where am I at here? I went too many screens. Okay, so as I mentioned, that modulation, where it'll start closing the damper down once you're halfway between your cut-in and your set temperature. If you go to your control options, it's called modulation. You can turn that off. So if you are having an issue with creosote buildup and spirals plugging a bit, one of the first things you can do is, for a period of time, turn that modulating off, and then it'll burn hotter and longer rather than burning at a lower temperature more consistently. So that's a quick potential fix for issues that you may have. The next is O2 Optimize. What it does, and I'm just conferring my notes because I don't want to steer you wrong here. We'd like to say that the top dampers are strictly controlled by water temperature, but there are a couple times when it's actually the oxygen level, which will also affect the top damper. So what O2 Optimize does is, if we can't maintain a higher enough oxygen level in the lower chamber, in the tornado combustion chamber, what it's going to do is start closing that top damper in order to bring those oxygen levels in the bottom back up. So basically, kind of what it's doing is making a smaller furnace. So it's going to produce less smoke, less BTUs, and allow that bottom chamber to catch back up, if that makes sense. So it just is a way of maintaining the efficiency and helping it burn cleaner. So normally your bottom damper is going to take care of that, but if it's just too much, the top damper will give it an assist by optimizing your O2. The next one is O2 limiting, which is kind of the opposite. There will be times when you could have too much oxygen in the bottom chamber. And so if it's more than if you have your oxygen set for 6% and the O2 gets up to 8% in the bottom, it's going to start throttling back the top damper as well as a way of trying to preserve heat. So it's going to introduce less fresh air in the top in order to allow it to the bottom damper to catch up as well. So kind of two things doing exact opposite. One when your oxygen gets too low, and one when it gets too high. Because as always, we want to always try and find that sweet spot in terms of the oxygen level. So that's top damper. Next, we go to the bottom damper. And again, as I mentioned, the bottom damper is controlled by the oxygen levels, and which, of course, as we all know, is at the top rear of the furnace over by the fan motor. And so the first thing to look at is your O2 setting. And so you can adjust that depending on a number of factors. It comes set from the factory at 6%. Ideally, if you had perfect climate, perfect wood, perfect situation, you could drop that down to potentially 3.5 to 4%. But very seldom would you ever have perfect conditions. So the default is set at 6. And then you would adjust it depending on how the furnace is performing. And when you do make changes to that, you don't want to go more than about 0.5% at a time because it can make a pretty big difference in how the furnace functions. So with these kind of things, it's always best to do baby steps. Max open, again, that controls how far open that bottom damper is allowed to go. It's set at 100%, and we've never seen a reason to change it. So you can change it, but we don't see any reason why you would ever want to. Minimum close. And what this does is prevents the fire from basically snuffing itself out when you have real high O2 levels in the bottom, because if you've got a lot of oxygen in the bottom, it's going to want to close down. And particularly at the end of a heating cycle, everything's shutting down. There still may be a lot of residual smoke in the firebox. So you want to leave some of that oxygen in there so that it just burns off the rest of the smoke or gases that are in. So usually we find 10% is a good setting, and there will be some situations where you may want to raise that, but they're pretty isolated instances. So we won't go into all the details on that right now, unless you have questions or have run into that in the past. And finally, off delay for your bottom damper. What it does is it keeps that bottom damper open after the end of a heating cycle. So again, everything's shut down. You've got smoke that's built up. There's still some residual smoke in the firebox. So it's going to stay open for additional 5 minutes to allow that smoke to work its way through the system, up and out the chimney. Because you don't want smoke sitting in there, and because if you do have any type of moisture buildup, again, it can create creosote. So smoke and moisture creates creosote. So you want that excess smoke to be pulled out of the system. So it stays open for about 5 minutes. Again, you can adjust it, but very seldom have we seen a need to do that. So if you have a customer says, well, my furnace is shut down, the bottom damper is still open. First question to ask is, when did it shut down? If it's less than 5 or 10 minutes, then odds are it's still open from the off delay. So it's important that you know that's there. And
just double check the whole screen there. There's a couple guys left. I'm not sure. Maybe they tried to rejoin. Maybe not. Just figured.
Don't see anybody.
And that's fine. I just thought maybe
I was just checking to see if there was anybody else who was trying to get back in that might have left and come back, but I don't think there is. Let's see, where are we at here now? Okay, bottom damper. Okay, top damper and O2 settings. This is kind of the chart that you're going to see in the owner's manual. And again, everything we went over is in there. And so would certainly encourage your customers to read it, but definitely all of us need to read it and stay on top of that as well. And I tell you, it never hurts to go back and look, because some of this stuff can be real confusing. So when we first came out with these new G series, we had our default set for 15 to 25% moisture, which is the middle column, and which is kind of the target of where we want to be. But realistically, we found a lot of people don't know what their moisture content is, or won't admit what their moisture content is. So a lot of people were running a bit high. So now it comes with the default in that first column. So in that 26% to 35%. And there is no reason, even if you have that higher moisture content, that you can't make the furnace run properly and cleanly if you have all the settings tweaked and adjusted to where they should be. So again, when you have a higher moisture content, you want your top damper set a little bit higher, so it's allowing more air in, and is causing it to burn hotter. When you get into lower moisture content, again, those numbers would come back down because you don't want it burning as fast. So drier wood burns faster. So in those cases, you want to slow it down a bit so that the system can keep up with it. Again, top damper minimum, again, that is something you would slightly increase if you have a little bit higher moisture content wood, or vice versa, you would bring it down a little bit when you're dealing in lower moisture wood as well. And oxygen, again, it's not the first thing that you want to change if you're having issues. Set at 6% is fine. If you've got real nice, well-seasoned oak or other hardwoods, and you want to try and be more efficient with it, or you get that guy who likes to tweak things, yeah, you can try dropping it down to 5 or maybe going a little bit lower, but typically you want to leave it around that 6%. And in some cases where you are having a lot of issues with moisture and creosote buildup, you can go a little bit higher. But currently we don't see a lot of need to change that O2 set point very much. Now, the other thing that we run into occasionally is where wood is too dry. And that's that last column where it's less than 15%. And you wouldn't think it'd be an issue because, boy, you'd think it'd dry hot and burn hot and clean. But the problem is it burns too quick. So whether the wood's too dry or it's split too small, basically you can overwhelm the system where it can't keep up and burn off all of that smoke. And you'll see that when you burn real dry wood, you'll see a lot more smoke coming out the chimney. And that's an indication that it's burning inefficient and not burning off all the gases. So when you are in that situation, basically you want to slow the burn down in the top. So you reduce your top air down from 65 or 75% down to about 60. And so that'll slow the burn down and hopefully slow the burn rate on that wood so it'll last a little bit longer and isn't going to turn into smoke so quickly. The other thing that you can do is try to get bigger splits of wood so it doesn't burn off so quick, or start mixing in some greener wood as well. So mixing is never a bad thing. If your wood is too wet, mix in some dry. If it's too dry, try and mix in some green. But ideally, if we can get in that 15 to 25% average moisture content, that is going to be the sweet spot.
Melvin, I don't know if you saw his comment in the chat, but he mentioned that burning thin, dry pallet scraps is very challenging. It's too slow.
Yeah, so that's a great point that Eldon raised about burning pallet scraps. Again, it's the same thing. Small pieces, very dry, burns up real quick, creates a bunch of smoke, but you don't get a long burn out of it, and you can't burn off all that smoke quickly. So you can do it, but yeah, it can be a pain. So not highly recommended as your choice of fuel. Okay, so again, when you're dealing with the O2, the goal, like the lower you can have your oxygen level and still burn clean is your maximum efficiency. So kind of put that another way, best efficiency comes from burning clean with as little oxygen as possible. But obviously we don't deal in absolutes here. So very seldom do we get anywhere near really, really high efficiency points. And I don't see how we can get above where we're at now with that 88% efficiency levels that we have now. Maybe the guys downstairs will figure out a way, but I don't see how much further we're going to be able to go. So again, if you've got that perfect wood, 15 to 25%, good size splits, you can maybe get down to that 3 to 5%. But I wouldn't try it unless you're willing to spend a lot of time monitoring your furnace. When you have less desirable wood or higher moisture, again, you want to keep that O2 level up around that 6%, and in some cases, maybe bump it up a little bit higher, a little bit at a time, 0.5%. We have seen instances going as high as 8% in order to get it to burn efficiently and burn clean. Again, a good telltale is if you see smoke coming out, that's a good indication that it's an oxygen issue where you're not getting the right enough oxygen in order to burn cleanly. And you know, sometimes it's a case of allowing it to add more oxygen, or in some cases you can't get enough oxygen and you have to slow that burn down. And then the other issue was the max open. Again, should be no reason why you'd ever want to change that. So getting into some of the key things that affect this outside of settings, and the biggest thing that we found that it affects how well your furnace burns is going to be your coal bed. And so typically you want to have that 6 to 12 inch bed of almost like charcoal in the bottom, where it still has the structure of logs or big chunks, and it's either black or gray. But that is where the majority of your heat is stored. So obviously when you first fire up a furnace, it takes a while to build up that coal bed. And that's when things don't burn as efficiently or as clean. And it can take 3 days, 4 days, even up to a week to get that coal bed established. And so once you've got it there, you want to do everything you can in order to maintain it and not burn it out. So some of the issues that affect your coal bed, again, is if you're burning wood that's too dry or too small, that doesn't, or is, we've seen it with beetle kill wood as well. And because it burns up so fast, it doesn't have a time to go through that chemical process of converting. Essentially what you're doing is converting from wood to coal. And so again, if you are burning up your coal bed, you may need to put in, you know, a little bit moisture wood, or try to switch to bigger slabs in order to bring that level back up. The other thing that we've seen, and it's one of the things that you'll find in the troubleshooting guide, is that customers can sometimes be too anal when they're talking about maintenance. And I've had guys that'll clean their firebox out once a week, and not a good idea, because every time you do that, you've got to start over and rebuild that coal bed. So typically, you know, a full-scale firebox clean out, it's an end of season thing. It's not something that you need to do on a regular basis. Doesn't mean you don't need to take the ashes out periodically when it builds up on the side, but don't mess with the coal bed once you've got it going, because it is the critical thing in order to keep everything running. So looking at some particular situations, again, the most common one that we've seen is sticking spirals. And some of the causes, obviously, is the moisture content in the wood. And so a couple of things to try is, if you're sticking, is you can increase the O2 by 0.5%. I wouldn't go higher than that to start. But you can also increase your top air 5%. So allow more air into that top chamber to try to get it to burn a little bit hotter. And one of the first things I would do to try and clean up the stickiness in the short term would be to temporarily turn off the modulation. And so once you get it running clean again, you can turn it back on because it does increase your efficiency. But if it recurs, you may be in a situation where, depending on their weather, their altitude, their type of wood, that you might just be better off leaving it off, especially if he's not too concerned about wood consumption. The other thing to do is increase your off delay by a couple of minutes. Again, that'll help clean out any residual smoke that's in there between cycles. Because again, that can convert to creosote as well. And you can also try adjusting the minimum open on the bottom damper and bumping that up to about 15 or 20%, so it's not closing down all the way. I'm slouching. I'm getting in trouble from the boss here. It doesn't look
Showing your nose.
showing my nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. You got my good side. The other thing that you'll see hear from customers, I think they think there's a problem with their furnace because they're seeing a lot of smoke. But again, you know, it's true. It looks like there's smoke coming out. But again, check that first 12 to 18 inches that's coming out of the chimney. And a lot of the times you'll see it's clear, or you'll see a bit of a haze coming up or a heat shimmer, and then it'll turn to smoke. And typically that's just condensation. So that's a good thing to mention with your customer as part of your training too. Let them know when they see stuff coming out of there, you know, if it's that white smoke coming out or that first 18 inches clear, that's normal. And what they're seeing is condensation, and not to be calling you at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon with your family saying, I've got smoke coming out my chimney. I don't think anybody likes that. So again, lots of little tweaks. If you run into these situations, first thing, check the troubleshooting manual to get some tips there. Refer to the owner's manual, or, you know, call in to us if you need some assistance with that, and we can certainly help you with it and walk you through it. But every month we get better at going through these things. And again, if you see ideas or you have issues, let us know. That's how we learn, because obviously having you guys in the field is our best source for information. So share your successes, share your failures, let us know where we can improve, because that's what we're always trying to strive for. So that kind of takes you through the control. Hopefully it was beneficial, didn't just confuse you. But go back and look through it again, look through the notes, and over time it'll become more familiar and more comfortable. You'll become more comfortable with it. So anything to add to that, Devin?
You did a great job.
Okay, are we getting close here? 3:30. So we're almost to the point where we can just go to a Q&A and wrap things up. But there is something that Teresa and Daniel have asked me to talk about, some admin things. This is their department. They're the ones who do payroll, so we need to keep them happy. So I said I would bring it up. There's been a lot of questions about payments and what's the best way to pay invoices and such. Obviously, we take checks, which is the way many people do it. The only situation there is you're dealing with the Postal Service. I don't know if the U.S. Postal Service is any better than the Canadian one, but it seems that periodically we do run into issues with things being delayed or not showing up, and that just causes everybody grief. We've had dealers who will pay using credit card, which probably isn't too bad for small orders, parts and things like that, just to get it done and get things out quickly. But often there's additional costs associated with that as well, especially with cross-border payments. So this last about 6 months or so, we've got a new system where you can make pre-authorized withdrawals. And so it's kind of like a debit without a card. And so essentially all we need is a void check, or basically your check information. And then what'll happen is we'll send you an invoice to be paid. And then we get return written confirmation from you on a form that says what invoice, how much you want to pay and what day. And then that's how we'll process it. So nothing goes through there until we actually have your written approval. Artie Lappin just came back in. Without your written approval, and there's absolutely no fees associated with it. So it's real simple. It's pretty much instantaneous and guarantees that you'll get your 3% prepaid discount when you're bringing in furnaces. And Keith is coming back in. We might have had something that dropped a few people out here. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. If you have any questions, we have emailed out the information on that. And anytime you have questions about invoicing, that type of thing, feel free to call in and talk to Teresa or Daniel, and they can bring you up to speed on how that works. And we're seeing more and more people get into that program all the time. Then one other quick thing, Devin kind of talked about this, doing the online warranty claim. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of reasons why. I just wanted to quickly pull it up on the screen here and see if it comes up. Let's see. Oh, is it going to show me? Share screen. Looks like for some reason it's not going to let me, but again, it's a real simple form to fill out. A lot of it's done with pull downs, and Vlad manages most of the warranty claims, and so he'd be very happy if you guys can consistently send that in, both to make it helps us make sure that everything gets taken care of in a timely manner, but also really helps us on the tracking side to see what all is being submitted and identifying where we have issues that need attention. And so you got lucky. We're not going to talk anymore about that. And so then lastly, is we can open it up. And I will turn it back to Devin to go over that and see if he's got any final things that he wants to go over. And how do I turn this back to you here, Devin? Reason is now hosting.
You want to mute yourself there?
No, I want to listen to myself.
You can. All righty. Yeah, just like Colin said, I mean, that was that wraps up pretty much everything that we had scheduled here. Yeah, no problem, Keith. I see your message there. I thought I'd seen you send me an invite, so I will take your decline request with no hurt feelings. But yeah, like Colin said, that wraps up everything that we had scheduled. But we always want to leave time at the end to ask questions or to give feedback or comments or anything like that. Now we kind of open it up to you guys to have your say or to share something if you need. Yeah, I'll leave it open if anyone has any questions. I also just want to make sure we always say thank you to you guys again for joining and contributing and taking time out of your day. We really appreciate the time that you guys give us, and also always really appreciate everything that you guys do for us throughout the year. I don't think we can share that enough, that you guys are really the backbone of our furnaces. You guys do such a great job for us, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate you guys and doing what you do, whether it's selling, installing, servicing, whatever it is. I mean, I don't think we even hear about 20% of the stuff that you guys actually do for us. So want to make sure that we say thank you. I know we appreciate it, myself and Ryan and Derek, and I know Colin and Vlad and Brent and Pat, everyone appreciates what you guys do here. And we, just want to make sure that we say thank you, because it is important, and we don't always get to say that as often as we would like. But yeah, if nobody has any questions, I certainly hope that for everyone that attended, that it was beneficial. Probably wouldn't have been as good as what the national dealer meeting, but we certainly understand that there are restrictions that don't always allow everyone to leave when they would want to, and timing and everything like that doesn't always work out. But from my experience from talking to the dealers that were here, I believe that the in-person national dealer meeting went very well. And I definitely feel that is something that we want to do again in the future. I won't give a date for it, but we certainly want to be able to do that every 5 to 10 years in there, is have everyone down at our shop. And just a reminder to everyone as well that the door is always open anytime for dealers to come and visit. You don't need permission. Just call one of us and just give us maybe a little bit of a heads up. We'll pick you up from the airport and put you up while you're here.
Kevin has a swimming pool now.
Yeah, well, depends when you come. You might be a polar swim, but right now it's pretty nice. Okay, Keith is asking a question here. Total sales for HeatMaster in 2022. Yes. Was it 2150, 2200 units last year?
I think it's 22 something.
Close to 2200 units is what I think we were able to produce in 2022. When we compare that to 2021, where were we? Around 1800, 1850 maybe. So oh boy, I'm not good at math. I'm going to say that's about a 20% increase roughly. So it was definitely a really good year. We can't complain about that. I mean, 2021 was a good year too. So 2022 was the best yet. And like I said earlier, I think there was a lot of dealers who set personal records last year too. Yes, Mark, it does get green up here in summer. It's a little brown now. We were pretty dry. We needed some rain. I don't know if I can show you guys kind of the background there for what you can see, but it does get green. It's not always cold and snowy here, so that's good. What I was going to ask is if there's anyone that is willing to share or wants to share, either the amount of furnaces they sold compared to what their best numbers were in the past. You don't feel like you have to. Sometimes that can be personal information. Don't want you to share that if you're not comfortable. But I think it was a very good year for a lot of dealers. We saw a lot of dealers take a lot of really big jumps. Colin, do you remember last year, how many dealers did we have make the jump from certified to master? There's got to be at least 10.
Yeah, I thought it was, I was thinking offhand it was like 16, something like that.
Okay, I'm going to unmute mine. Marty might be talking. Just bear with me 1 second, Marty. I'm not sure if you were saying something or not, but sorry, I had my computer muted here. If not, that's okay. Yeah, like I was saying to Colin, we had quite a few dealers make the jump from certified to master. So that's very encouraging. We usually get a few every year, but this last year, I want to say we probably had close to 10. We had a lot of dealers that made big steps, and that's awesome. That's very encouraging, and we would love that to happen for every year and for every dealer to be at the master level. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. Don't get discouraged. I'm sure there's guys, dealers who have been around for a while that maybe took 4 or 5, 8 years to get to that master level, but it does happen. You just keep doing what you're doing and keep working hard, and you will get there. If there is, go ahead.
Yeah, Devin. Oh, This is Bunny going back to what you said about people visiting.
Yeah.
Kenneth just got home. He spent several days with you guys. For everybody else, one of my guys went up to visit them, and they fed him well and put him up in a good hotel and let him all through the shop. And he came home pretty pumped. He really enjoyed the trip. So they will treat you well if you show up. Absolutely.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, we really enjoyed having Kenneth here too. I mean, in all dealers, right? It's always great. Like the dealer meetings were awesome. You know, being able to see that many guys and have everyone come together, that was awesome. And we want to do that again. It's another thing when you know, when we can spend that individual time with dealers. Like I know Eldon, you've come up in the past too when we haven't had the national in-person dealer meetings, and we always enjoy spending that that one-on-one time with dealers as well. So like I said, I mean, anytime any one of our dealers wants to come up, it doesn't matter if it's January, July, December, you tell us when you want to come and we'll make it work. So that's always an open invitation.
You just need a passport.
Maybe. Legally, yes, you would, but we might be able to get you across without. We'll just send you up the river. But yeah, if there's nothing else or nobody else has any questions or comments or anything like that, I don't want to tie up any more of your guys' times. We're just over. It's about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes, something like that. We are projecting about 3 hours. Certainly want to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions or share comments. But if nobody has anything else they want to go over, we can end the meeting here and let you guys get on with your day as well.
And feel free to email us directly.
Yeah, you can email us directly as well. Either myself, Colin, Pat, Vlad, Brent, pretty much anyone but Ryan can help you at this point. So Ryan just forwards your emails to us mostly. So that's okay. If you want to go that route, we can. But
all right.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you guys very much. We appreciate the time. Always very thankful for you guys. And yeah, keep selling furnaces, and we're looking forward to another good year here. Have a good one, guys. Thank you.